Hi there, my name is Jared McFarland. My company's name is McFarland Fitness, and today I'll be walking you through the program that I laid out for my client Enrique. He's a power lifter, which means he'll be going through a squat, deadlift, and bench press as his three primary lifts, and then we'll transfer over to his accessory lifts. But before that, I'll show you the warm-up, and then to finish, I'll show you the cool-down. I'll be narrating throughout, so enjoy. Hi there, welcome to my video. To start off, I'm just going to walk you through the specifics of the training program that I have for Enrique, and then we'll get started. So, to begin, for the specific block of training that I have Enrique doing, it will consist of 5 weeks of training followed by a 1-week deload. So we'll repeat that another time for a total of 12 total weeks. So what that'll consist of as far as periodization goes will be always starting with a lighter weight, lighter volume, and lighter intensity. Then as the weeks and days increase, we will increase those variables depending on the day and that phase of training for that particular time. I do this so that we can continue to challenge the athlete, and so we can also push some of those variables, and that will help increase strength and hypertrophy, which is what we're really trying to accomplish within these 2 blocks of training. As far as the strength portion of training goes, we will be training in Enrique 70 to 95% of his 1 rep maximum, and be working in the rep ranges of roughly 2 to 5 reps. Resting times will be about 3 to 5 minutes between sets, and then follow that with hypertrophy and some of his accessory lifts. We'll be working in the range of 60 to 85% of his 1 rep maximum, and then be in the rep ranges of 6 to 12 total reps. And resting times with his hypertrophy training will be anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds. And lastly, the type of split that I chose for this phase of training will be a push, pull, leg split. And I'm using this split because it will allow me to train each primary lift on their own on separate days. So what this will allow him to do is to focus on improving mechanics of each of his primary lifts, but also load the weight maximally when we need to without inhibiting any of his other lifts that would follow. One of the other benefits that I like about the push-pull leg split is being able to train similar muscle groups within that same session. As well, we're going to be able to fit a good amount of volume for his accessory lifts and also for his hypertrophy training. Also, an important consideration is to break up the training so as to not inhibit one of the other lifts. For example, on a Monday, if I do a squat, I'm not going to want to do his deadlift or his pull session that next day because the legs will be a little bit fatigued. Maybe the back will be a little bit fatigued as well, so I'll split that up. So I'll put that on the day after. So for example, it will look like this: Monday, legs; Tuesday, press; Wednesday, pull. Then we'll repeat that for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which come to a total of 6 total training days per week. Alright, so now that we have the specifics of his training program all squared away, we're going to start with the warm-up. So what I like to do with the warm-up is a dynamic warm-up. So what this dynamic warm-up will consist of is some light stretches while in movement or while walking, and then some form of a light cardio exercise for a few minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. What's important is to also go through the full range of motion on some of these big compound lifts to make sure that our muscles are nice and warm and flexible, which will help us be the most effective within those lifts as well as avoid any injuries. So prior to the primary lifts, which are those big compound lifts, what I usually like to do is go through a specific warm-up for each individual lift. So mainly this involves doing the actual lift, but starting off with a very light weight and then progressively going up in weight. Normally this consists of 2 to 4 total sets until he reaches the weight that he'll be using for sets. Starting with high reps, low weight, and then as the weight increases, we bring the reps down to accommodate the weight. We also don't want to fatigue the athlete. This is just strictly for getting his muscles primed and getting used to the load that he'll be lifting. And one final point is just to make sure that all the joints are warmed up as well. That way we have them lubricated and ready to perform each exercise, and so that we can prevent any injuries. Alright, so the first of the 3 primary lifts will be the squat. Now when performing the squat, I like to give Enrique a couple cues that he can use that will help him complete the lift with proper form, efficiency, and of course safety. Okay, step 1 for the squat is going to be the approach to the bar. So the first thing he's going to want to do is grab the bar with both hands, with the width being about shoulder width or just outside the shoulders. This will depend on the anatomy of the individual, but generally what I'm looking for is a nice straight vertical forearm. Second, he'll step onto the bar with feet shoulder width apart. He'll then place the bar on top of his upper traps since we are doing a conventional deadlift. Number 3, when lifting the bar, he'll need to make sure he lifts with his legs, not his back or his hips, and then take 2 steps back. Number 4, before the descent, he'll need to take a nice big breath, hold that in, all the while keeping his abs back with a slight natural arch and his toes slightly pointed out. Number 5, he'll begin the descent with his hips hinging at the same time as his knees are going to be driving out and over the toes. Number 6, once at the bottom, he'll need to maintain tightness in the torso, as well as continuing to drive his knees out over his toes as he comes up out of the bottom of the squat. And lastly, number 7, he'll need to lock out his hips and knees at the very top while he exhales, and then he'll repeat that entire process again until he's completed the allotted reps. Also, on leg day, we'll always start with the major lifts first, which require the most energy, then move on to some of the lighter load type movements and accessory work. One of my favorite is the front squat, which is a really great accessory lift for squats. It helps strengthen the quads, abs, back, and shoulders, which all help improve the conventional squat. This is a great exercise as well for building lean mass in the quads, which goes back to the hypertrophy which we're trying to accomplish, and also improving form on the squat. Some of my other favorite lifts that I like to perform on leg days are the split squat, lunges, Bulgarian split squats, and leg press. Next up, we have the pull movement, the primary being the deadlift. And again, I have a list of cues that the athlete will go through to make sure that he has the most effective and safe lift. First step we have is the approach to the bar. So first what he'll want to do is step up to the bar, feet about shoulder width apart, toes pointed straight, and then the bar needs to come about halfway over his foot. Second step is going to be before reaching for the bar. What I like the athlete to do is to get those shoulders pressed back and down. This will engage the lats to make sure he has a nice support for his spine. Once his lats are engaged, he's going to get into number 3, which is bending over and grabbing the bar with a nice pronated grip just outside his legs. Again, before the lift, that athlete should take a nice deep breath, bring his chest out, hips slightly sunk down, and then push through his feet at the same time, pulling up on the bar. While doing that, he wants to keep that bar as close to his body as he can and maintain a nice straight bar path, and then repeat until he's completed his reps. And again, we will progress through the pull session with the exercises that require the most energy. Some of my favorites include bent over rows, which we can load with a really good amount of weight and will also be useful for strength training as well as hypertrophy. It also uses a lot of the same muscles like the hamstrings and the lower and mid back. And some of my favorite pull exercises are lat pull downs, chin ups, seated rows, and face pulls. And finally, we have the push session, with the primary lift being the bench press. And again, I will go through a list of cues that the athlete will use. Okay, number one. Once on the bench, he's going to bring his body to eye level with the bar. 2, hands shoulder width or wider. This again will depend on the athlete and his anatomy. 3, he's going to plant his feet flat on the ground. Number 4, he's going to have his back slightly arched, shoulder blades pressed back. Before unracking, he's going to take a nice deep breath, push through his feet, tighten the glutes, keep that arch in the back slightly, maintain those shoulders pressed back, and then unrack the weight. Number 5, once unracked, he's going to bring that bar at a slight angle down towards his mid-chest, touch the bar slightly, and then press back up to that original position, and lock the elbows, exhale, and then again repeat until he's finished his reps. As far as accessory lifts go for some of Enrique's pressing movements, some of my favorites are the military press, incline bench press, dips, push press, and dumbbell bench press. Really, the primary goal with all these accessory lifts and the hypertrophy training is to increase our strength in all of our primary lifts and powerlifting lifts. And lastly, the cool down, which will consist of a series of static stretches and or light cardio style exercise. This will be to maintain mobility, flexibility, and of course to bring down the heart rate and blood pressure. I like to use many yoga style cool down poses because of the way they use movement to get stretching in the muscles, as well as it's a new way to kind of keep up with an athlete's mobility because they are so effective. Which in the long term will help with the longevity of their lifting career long after their competitive training. So to sum up Enrique's training, the split, load, volume, intensity, and exercise selection are all taken into careful consideration when coming up with this program. All these variables will depend on many, including training experience, pre-existing injuries, mobility, recovery time, even weather, on top of some of those main variables that I mentioned prior. Each athlete needs to be catered to individually and programmed specifically for their individual needs. This can be shown down to even the littlest detail, like the width of a squat stance, depth of a squat, hand position in a bench press, or even if the athlete is prepared for those lifts entirely. And lastly, the cool down. The cool down will consist of a series of static stretches and or light cardio style exercise to maintain mobility, flexibility, and also to bring down the heart rate and the blood pressure. I like to use also many yoga style cool down poses and mobility exercises because of the way they use movement within a static style stretch. This is important to help the longevity of their lifting career long after their competitive training. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video.